Hello, have you ever had the vision of passing the Uganda New Lower Secondary Curriculum Chemistry? Here you are. Please watch this video and get a tips so that you can pass the chemistry very well. Here are tips that are given to you in order to respond to chemistry items under the new lower secondary curriculum. Chemistry as a subject under the Ugandan new lower secondary curriculum has a code of 545 and it has two papers. Paper 1 is the theory, which has the code 545-1. Then paper 2 is the practical. It is either code 545-2 or 545-3. Now the candidates will be assessed in knowledge, understanding, skills, attitudes and values. So all these are the areas to which each student and each learner is going to be assessed. Now, basically in this video, we're going to look at paper 1. The format of this paper is that this paper will be a theory. It will be assessed on your knowledge, understanding and appreciation of chemistry concepts, and your values will also be assessed in this paper. Now, it will span all the 4 years of your education. It means what you had been learning in chemistry, right from senior 1 up to senior 4, will be set in this paper. So it's actually now an evidence that you had been in class right from senior 1 up to senior 4, and items will be scenario based. So what are the important things that we need to know? You need to know that the duration of this paper will be average of 2 hours. It will compose of sections A and B. It will have 6 items, 2 items in section A and 4 items in section B. And you will only attempt 4 questions in total. It means you will attempt 2 questions from each section. Now, before we go deeper into understanding this paper of chemistry, this is what I need you to know. Since you are getting closer to your examinations, please, before you enter the examination room, make sure that you are prepared. I want you to remind yourself of 5 P's, meaning proper planning prevents poor performance. If you have not planned properly, it means you are going to have poor performance. But if you have planned proper, you are going to prevent what? Poor planning. Secondly, I want you to be smart. When you are going to sit for the examination, please be smart. Check your stationery, whether you're having calculators, you're having pens, you're having pencils. Check everything necessary for the examination. Check whether you're having. Now, if you are now in the examination room, you have settled in the examination room and they have given you the answer, the question paper and answer booklet. This is what you are supposed to do. First, read the instructions. Pay attention to the time that is being allocated. This is to plan yourself because there will be no extra time added for you. Now, during the examination, don't panic, settle down, you calm down and read all the questions carefully. After reading these questions, start with those ones that you have understood so very well. Start with the simplest ones and you'll go to the complex ones later. Otherwise, by the end of this video, you'll realize that all the questions are simple. Yes. If there is any help that you need, please ask it through the invigilator, or basically I'll advise you ask it through the invigilator. Now, let's now come to this paper. As we said before, this paper is comprised of 2 sections, section A and section B. Now we are going to start with section A. Section A is comprised of 2 items, which items are being broken into tasks. they have tasks, and both of these items, they are compulsory. This section only emphasizes on your knowledge and how you value something. Yes, it will also assess your values of something. Now, the responses to these items in section A shall be written in the spaces provided. Now, what are the areas of assessment? There are majorly 3 areas on which you'll be assessed in this section A. The first area is categorizing, second area is suitability, and maybe the third area is giving advice. However, each item is constructed from different elements of construct from the syllabus. It has a unique approach and comes from specific topic or even portions of a topic. Now, section A topics for item 1, they are got from the second element of construct, which second element of construct says the learner is to appreciate the application of chemistry in daily life. That is item 1. It is got from the second element of construct, where the learner appreciates the application of chemistry in daily life. Now, the topics or the accessible areas in item 1 will be chemicals for consumers. In chemicals for consumers, we have food additives, we have medicines, we have detergents, and nuclear processes will also be assessed under item 1. It means in section A, item 1, you will find any of these 4 areas. Yes. The topic is chemical for consumers and nuclear processes. Those are the 2 topics you'll find. But under chemicals for consumers, you may find areas like food additives, medicine, detergents, or else you may find nuclear processes. That is for section A, item 1. Now, section A, item 2 is gotten. The items will be set from the third element of construct, which says the learner appreciates the diversity and interaction of substances and their importance in life. So, the areas where you'll be assessed in this section A, item 2 are elements, compounds, and mixtures, the periodic table, trends in the periodic table, structure and bonding, formulas, stoichiometry and mole concept, using materials, carbon in life, reactivity series, air, which involves rusting and combustion. So those are the areas in which you'll be assessed in item 2. So when you are going to sit for the examination, just be assured that any of these areas where my cursor is running will appear. One of them must appear in item 2 of the chemistry paper that you're going to sit for. Now, how do we approach these items? How do we approach item 1? How do we approach item 2? Now, for item 1, the first thing that we need to know or we need to put as we're approaching responding to this item is the category or type of the product and its function or how it works. Yes, if it is a product, how does the product work? Yes, so you need to state the category clearly and state how it works. Yes, you categorize the product, you categorize the process that you have identified, identify one function of the product or how it works. Yes. Now, after categorizing, what else do? You need to identify the danger or the side effect of the product or the process and mitigation. Yes. So this danger must be on human life, not the environment. Identify the danger, explain that danger on human life, and you mitigate the danger. Then lastly, you are supposed to evaluate the product or the process. So you are going to do this evaluation basing on both similarities and differences. It means you have to give differences and similarities. This is only for item 1, section A. Now item 2, section A, you will have to categorize. As you are categorizing, you categorize the element, the compound, or the substance, or even the material with a reason, and you give an example. Now, after categorizing with reason and giving an example, you are going to give properties or prediction of properties of the element, or the compound, or the substance, or the materials, and at least one use. Yes, you give at least 4 properties, or the characteristics, or prediction of the trends, and any one use. Now, after that, you'll have to include the impact or the effect, the side effect or the dangers on the environment and the mitigation. So this time around in section A part 2, the danger or the side effect are going to be on the environment, right? The danger or the side effects or the impact are going to be on the environment only. But remember, for section A part 1, the dangers must be on human life. I believe you are getting the difference clearly. So you have to identify the danger. After identifying the danger or the side effect, you mitigate it. There you'll have approached, you've finished. Those are the 3 major areas in which you are to respond to item 1 and item 2 in section A. Now, let's look at example where we're going to apply these 2 approaches for item 1 and item 2. So we shall have an example for item 1. The first example says, Rogers is increasingly losing customers who are always complaining that his handmade fruit juices are getting spoiled easily. In order to cater for the customers' complaint, Rogers wants to add an ingredient product to his fruit juice, but he lacks knowledge of what exact ingredient product he should use. Now, task. As a chemistry learner, explain the categories of the ingredient product he should use. Yes, that is where you do your categorization. You categorize, identify the product. Then explain how the ingredient product works. You remember the first thing was categorizing. After categorizing, you state or explain how it works, right? Then explain the dangers associated with the long-term use of the product. Yes, so let's have a look at how we can approach this. When we are explaining the categories, explain the categories of the ingredient product he should use, we say, since Rogers is losing customers because the customers are complaining that his handmade fruit juices are getting spoiled easily, it means he needs a preservative, right? He needs a preservative. Now, we're going to categorize it in this way. Rogers will use natural food preservatives and artificial food preservatives. Yes, he should use either natural food preservatives or artificial food preservatives, because food preservatives are categorized into natural food preservatives and artificial food preservatives. So he can use any of the 2, right? Now, explain how the product works. How do the food preservatives work? That is now how it works. You remember when we go to our previous slide, let's go to our previous slide. The approach says categorize the product or the process identified, and then any one function of the product or how it works, right? Then you'll go to the danger or the side effect and mitigate it. But now, when we're approaching this scenario item here, this is what we're doing. We are going to first categorize, just as we did. We have actually categorized unnatural food preservatives and artificial preservatives. Those are the types of food preservatives or categories that Rogers will use. Now, how do they work? The food preservatives generally, they prevent or they slow down food spoilage. How do they do that? By inhibiting the growth of microorganisms that will lead to food spoilage. There will have brought out how the food preservatives work. Then we have to explain the dangers associated with the long-term usage of the product. The dangers associated with the long-term usage of the product. What are dangers? We give a danger, we explain that danger, then we mitigate the danger. Yes. The food preservatives like sodium nitrate, in absence of amino acids, can turn into nitrous amine, which can cause cancer. Yes. This can be mitigated by eating fresh food, frozen food, and we can even take fresh fruit juices, and the people should take fresh fruit juices and frozen fruit juices. You remember, if you put a fruit juice in a refrigerator, the temperatures will be low, which does not support the function of the microorganisms, which also call the food spoilage. Yeah, that is basically an example of item one. Item one, yes. Now, some of the categories that you might encounter in item one might be about detergents, where detergents are categorized into soapy detergents and soapless detergents. Yes, they're categorized into soapy detergents and soapless detergents. So you have to also find out how they work, right? You explain how they work. Then after explaining how they work, their effect, explain the effect, then the mitigation. And these effects will be on the human life, right? Not on the environment. Now, you may also encounter categorization about nuclear processes, which are categorized into nuclear fusion and nuclear fission. So in each category, they have their ways of how they function. Yes, you explain how they work. Now, and then you also explain their impact on human life. After explaining the impact, you mitigate the impact. Then under medicine, medicines are categorized into traditional medicine and modern medicine. Yes, traditional medicine and modern medicine. Under these medicines, we have analgesics. Analgesics are pain relievers. We have antibiotics. Antibiotics, these are medicines that are used against bacterial infections. Then psychotherapeutics, these are medicines that helps to stimulate them. They help to stimulate the mind. Yes, they are connected with the mind. Then we have other categories of medicine. Then we also have under food additives. Food additives are also categorized into synthetic. We have the synthetic food additives and natural food additives. Yes. Then under this food additives, we have food additives which are used for preserving food. There are those ones which are used to prevent oxidation of food. They are called antioxidants. Then there are those ones which give good flavor for our food. They are flavoring agents. We have stabilizers, thickening agents, food color. Those are all food additives. So they can be both natural and synthetic. Yes, depending on how you have identified the problem in the scenario and how you're explaining them. So those are the concepts that you need to bring when you're responding to item one. Then another example of item one is this. It says Onyera lives in an area where they use borehole water. He slid and fell and his white shirt became dirty. He decided to use a detergent to clean his shirt. The shirt remained dirty with some brown spots. yet he had rinsed it several times. As a chemistry learner, point out the problem Onyera made when choosing a product. First of all, if I'm asked what product did Onyera choose? He chose a detergent. To wash the shirt with. Yes. So here you're going to point out the product problem. As you're pointing out the problem, you'll find yourself already categorizing detergents, right? Choose the detergent. So when you're pointing out the problem, you're going to categorize detergents. Then help Onyera understand how the product works. You're going to explain how detergents work when you are helping him understand how the product works. Then advise Onyera on the challenges associated with the long-term usage of the product. So when you're giving the advice associated with long-term usage of the product, you are going to give the advice basing on similarities and differences. Yes. Advise Onyera on the challenges associated with the long-term usage of the product. You are going to give first the impact of using the product and explain it and mitigate it. Explain the impact and mitigate this specific impact that you have identified. Yes. After identifying the problem, please. After identifying the danger, you need to explain this danger, and after explaining the danger, you mitigate this particular danger that you have identified. Now, what do you do after that? What do you do after that? In advice, as I said before, you identify the danger or the side effect, you explain and mitigate it. Now, when you're giving the advice must now be related to similarities and differences. Yes. Now, for example here, Onyera, if we are to respond to this, point out the problem Onyera made when he was choosing a product. Onyera made, okay, we can say that Onyera used a soapy detergent. He should have used a soapless detergent. So we have categorized detergent into soapy detergents and soapless detergent. Or we say Onyera used what? A soapy detergent. Now, help him understand how the product works. We all know that the product detergents, they are surfactants. They facilitate the cleansing action of water. They do this because they have two parts. We have the hydrophobic tail, or the fat soluble part that dissolves in the grease or the dirt. Then they also have the water soluble part that dissolves in water. So as the fat soluble tail dissolves the dirt, as you continue agitating the fabric, the dirt itself will be dislodged from the fabric. So when you rinse with water at the end of the day, you'll find that the dirt is washed, or the grease is washed away with water. Simple. That is how the product works. Then advise Onyera on the challenges associated with long-term usage of the product. We can say that this product, the effect is when you're using these detergents, the detergents, they irritate the eyes. They irritate the eyes. How do they reach that level of irritating your eye? When they come into contact with your eye. So how do you mitigate this? You mitigate it by washing your eyes with plenty water. You have to wash your eyes with plenty water. That will have mitigated. Now, still on advice, we have to give differences and similarities. What is the difference between soapy detergents and What are the differences between soapy detergents and soapless detergents, or the similarities between the two? Both soapy detergents and soapless detergents, they are effective. They are effective with soft water. It means when you're using soapy detergents and soapless detergents with the soft water, they are very effective. Yes. You can give one difference and one similarity. Yes, give one difference and one similarity. We can say soapy detergents and soapless detergents are very effective with soft water. But now the difference becomes soapy detergents are less effective with hard water compared to soapy detergents are less effective with the hard water, while soapless detergents are effective with the hard water. So the difference is already being stated and their similarity is being stated. Yes. Now, we have brought the point of categorization now. We have explained how the product works. Then we have given an advice, given effect on the human life and its mitigation. Then again, we have given similarities and we have given differences. There, we are done with item 1. If this was the paper you were going to write on, that is what you should have written. Now, you also have other examples like Joy visiting her grandmother in the village. Joy was visiting the grandmother in the village when she developed a body on. Sorry, Joy was visiting her grandmother in the village. When she developed a body ache, her grandmother picked some leaves from the various plants which she squeezed and gave her. Joy was hesitant and at first insisted on going to the health center, but when she took the liquid concoction, she felt significantly better. As a learner of chemistry, help Joy's grandmother understand what Joy expected. Explain to Joy why she felt better when she took the concoction. Advise Joy and her grandmother about the problem associated with the use of the product. Yes. Joy's grandmother gave Joy some liquid concoction made from herb. Now, this liquid concoction made from herb is a traditional medicine. But since he was feeling headache, Joy needed a pain reliever, right? Joy needed a pain reliever. She needed a pain reliever. So the grandmother gave this concoction as a pain reliever. So that is under analgesics. So we can say that Joy's grandmother gave her Joy's grandmother understand what Joy expected. Since Joy was having headache, Joy expected a pain reliever. Yes, Joy expected a pain reliever. Now, as she expected a pain reliever, here we're going to categorize the pain reliever as a traditional pain reliever or traditional painkiller. Yes. Then after categorizing it as a painkiller, the statement also said she was hesitant. Joy was hesitant and first insisted on going to the health center. Yes. If she was going to go to the health center, it means she was going to get a modern pain reliever. Yes. Or a synthetic pain reliever that's been made by man. Now, the categories of medicine here are going to be traditional and modern medicine. Right? So since it is painkiller, the category we're going to categorize according to painkillers or analgesics. Explain to Joy why she felt better after she took the concoction. Why will she feel better after taking that concoction? It is because that concoction, it reduces pain by inhibiting the transmission of nerve impulses that will have transmitted the pain. Yes, if those nerve impulses, they are being inhibited, or their transmission is being inhibited, it means the pain will reduce. Advise Joy and her grandmother about the problem associated with the use of the product. Yes, when we're giving this advice, the advice is going to be about the dangers associated with this product and how these dangers may occur and how they can be mitigated, or the advice can be like, basing on the differences and similarities, we bring them. Yes, we bring the differences and similarities here. So, what are we going to say about this? We are going to evaluate. We're going to evaluate the both traditional and modern painkillers. They work the same way. They reduce pain. Yes, they reduce pain. But the traditional medicines, they don't have a fixed dosage. But the modern medicines, they have fixed dosage. So now the challenge here may come, the danger here to human life may be there can be overdose. How can the overdose come? Because the traditional medicine, the traditional painkiller, or the liquid concoction does not have a fixed dosage. So how can this one be mitigated? They must visit what? The nearest health center. Yes, they must visit the nearest health center, or you advise them to use the modern medicine which has fixed dosage, and you take it according to the directives of the physician. So those are the ways you are to respond to item 1 of section A. You first categorize. After categorizing, you state how it works. Then after stating how it works, you give side effect or a danger to human life. You explain this danger, and after explaining the danger, you mitigate this danger. Then you evaluate the product by giving similarities and differences. There, you are done with section A, part 1. Now, let's look at examples of item 2. Item 2 in section A still. It says the government wants to construct a new strong dam in the Simpi region along River Nile in order to increase the hydroelectricity power production. She has hired a Chinese dam construction company to execute this exercise, using different materials in the market and have minimal impact on the environment. The chief engineer of the company has promised the government that he will use or select suitable materials basing on their qualities and properties. As a chemistry student, use your chemistry knowledge to explain the categories of the materials used, explain the suitability of the materials, advise the chief engineer on the impact of the material, and advise the chief engineer on the impact of the material on the environment. Here we go. Yes, we first categorize these materials. Materials are categorized into natural materials and synthetic material. So here, when we are giving categories, we give a category, we give a reason for the category, and we give an example. First categorize it, give a reason for the category, and give an example. That is for item 2, section A. So we categorize these materials as natural materials, materials made by God. For example, what? The stones or the sand, which could be used for the construction of the bridge. Or we categorize these materials as artificial materials. We say artificial materials because they are materials that are being made by man. Then we give an example. For example, the iron bars, the cement, Yes, those are examples of what? Artificial materials. So, what else do we do? What else do we need to do? We have to give suitabilities of these materials. When we're giving suitabilities, we give at least 4 suitabilities when we're responding to this. At least 4 suitabilities. Then we give any other one use of this material, of the selected material, the material that you have identified. Yes. Now, someone can choose, because in construction of the dam, yes, in the construction of the dam, they can use both natural and artificial materials. So you can choose to write about one. You can choose a natural material where you say the chief engineer should use a natural material made by God. For example, you give an example, right? So it means when you're giving properties, the properties that you're going to give, they're going to reflect to that example you have given there in the first part. Now, if we say for this situation I picked artificial materials or synthetic materials, which I gave example, which materials are made by man, which example I gave as cement and iron bars. Now, the suitabilities here, I gave them reflecting to the iron bars. Yes. Now, this when I'm explaining the suitability, the materials used to construct a dam, they have different properties. For example, the iron bar, it has high tensile strength. It means it is very strong. It has high melting and boiling points. Iron bars, they are not elastic. They are inelastic. Yes, they cannot be stretched. Iron bars are malleable. It means they can be bent in the way you want. They are ductile. Yes, those are the properties of iron bars. Then remember when we said we're responding to item 2 of section A, under suitabilities we give at least 4 suitabilities and when any other use. Yes, so we can give the use of the iron bars. Iron bars are used to reinforce the strength of the concrete. Yes, that is how we respond to part 2 of the item in section A. Part 2. Yes. Lastly, in that very section A part item 2, when you're given an advice, you are going to give the advice on the impact of the material and environment. Yes, the advice must be on the impact of the material and environment. So it means when you're identifying the impact of this material, you explain this impact on of the material. It must be on the environment, not now on human life. The one on human life is the one for item 1, but for item 2, it is on the environment. Now, an advice that I was giving here, it reflects like the impact of this material. Like, for example, the iron bars deplete soil fertility in case of accumulation in the soil. This can be mitigated by recycling them. Yes, depleting soil fertility is an impact or side effect. How it occurs, it's when they accumulate in the soil. After accumulating in the soil, they can deplete the soil or destroy the soil's fertility. How can it be mitigated? Instead of dumping them anyhow, they should be recycled. Yes, there you will find yourself, you have brought all the 3 concepts, categorizing with reason and example, giving at least 4 properties and any other one use. Then, lastly, giving an impact on environment, explaining the impact, and lastly, mitigating. Those are the basic areas for responding to item 2 of section A. So we still have other examples like Gift is in the process of constructing his house without affecting the environment. He wants to build a good, stronger house There are various building materials of different qualities and properties on the market. However, he does not know the quality of materials to use. Gift knows that choosing quality materials depend on the nature of the material and has come to you for an advice. So task, explain the categories of the materials, suitabilities of the materials. When you're categorizing these materials, they're going to be natural and synthetic materials. So you have to give reasons why you are saying he should use natural materials, and you give an example of that natural materials you want him to use. Yes. Now, sometimes you'll find in the scenario they restrict you to some certain possession. For example, they might say, Gift is in the process of constructing his house. He wants to fit his doors, but doesn't know the material used for fitting the doors. So it means we are going to use materials for fitting doors. Yes, you have to reflect on what materials are used for fitting doors. Sometimes they might say someone wants to lay a foundation and doesn't know the materials to be used for laying the foundation of the building. So your mind should go to materials that are going to be used. When you're giving examples, you give examples with materials that are used for laying the foundation. So when you're giving suitabilities, the suitabilities are going to be according to the example of the material that you have selected. You selected, you actually give the suitability of that material that you have given as an example. There it correlates well. Now, under advice, you're going to give the impact of that material and environment, explain it, then you give a mitigation to it. That is how you respond to item 2. I believe with these few examples, you will have understood how to respond to item 2 of section A. Yes. So here we go. Materials are substances that constitute an object. They are categorized into natural materials and synthetic materials. Natural materials, they come from living things. For example, wood. Artificial materials are made by man, for example, plastics. Now, when you are now explaining the suitability, you can give one example that you're given. If you're using iron, yes. If you're using iron, properties of iron is very strong, high melting and boiling point. It is inelastic. I think this is something that we have done in the previous one. So you'll use this one as an example. Now, we also have another example here. It says, a group of youths have received money from the Community Development Fund to set up a bakery. They need clearance from the district officials who have emphasized that they should use a suitable and environmental friendly packaging materials for their bakery products. The youths have organized a meeting to discuss the possible packaging materials, which materials they can use, to which you have been invited for consultation. Using your chemistry knowledge you have acquired in using the knowledge you have acquired in chemistry, explain to the youths the categories of the materials they can choose, the suitability of the materials in packaging their product. Help them defend their choice of materials before the district officials. So, materials that can we all know, actually we actually know, you've ever gone to markets and you have ever seen how things have been packed in the market. Others have been packed in paper bags, boxes, others are packed in polythenes, so it all depends on how you're defending them, right? So when you're categorizing these materials, you're going to reflect on packaging materials. So you can categorize the material as a natural material with the reason and give an example. That is for item 2. You can any one of it. Yes, any one of it with example. Identify the material with example and give a reason. Yes, you identify at least 4 suitabilities of that material that you have identified, and you give one use of that material. Yes. Then you give the effect of this material on the environment and explain it, mitigate it. So those are the basic things that you need to understand when you're responding to item 2 of section A. Now, let's look at other possible categorization topics. There are other topics which might come in your items or items that you're going to, in your examinations that you're going to sit in the future. When you see a question on periodic table, you have to categorize these metals or elements on the periodic table as metals and non-metals. Then you give the properties. If it is a metal, you give properties of metals. If it is a non-metal, give properties of non-metal. The use, the impact, and the mitigation. Yes. Then when it is trends in a periodic table, so it will depend on the position of the metal and position of the non-metal. So when you're giving suitability, is going to be like predicting the properties in relation to if I may give example here, I may give example that when you reach home, that you went home for holidays. After reaching home, your friends visited you, but you were doing your holiday package at home. One of your friends got your book and opened your book. And after opening your book, he or she got a symbol in your book written as capital M and small g. So we may ask, what is the category of the substance that your friend have seen in that book? We all know that Mg is magnesium. So what is the category of that substance? Is magnesium a metal or a non-metal? Magnesium is a metal. So we say, we say magnesium is a metal. We'll give an example as magnesium, then it is categorized as metal. Then we need to give why it is described as a metal. It can either be by its valency or by its electronic configuration. Yes, that is how we can defend it. Now, you give the suitabilities or the properties of metals generally. Yes, metals have high boiling point, they have high melting point, all those properties, you bring them. The impact on the environment and its mitigation. Again, under activity series, they're going to be categorized as pure metals and alloys, where you give the difference in their properties. Yes, pure metals, they have different properties. Alloys, they have different properties. Yes, they also have impact on the environment, and we also mitigate them. Bonding and structures, there are 3 types of bond: metallic bonds, ionic bonds, and covalent bonds. The suitabilities depend on their characteristics or the properties, and then one use. When you're advising, you give the impact, the mitigation, and this will be on the environment. Using materials are categorized into natural and synthetic materials. You give a suitability at least 4, you give one use, you give impact and mitigation. Yes, so there you will be, you will have gotten conversant with item 2 of section A. Now, one thing that I want you to remember is both item 1 and item 2, in it, when you are categorizing, you identify. After identifying, you define. In fact, in item 2, you identify. After identifying, you define. After defining, you give an example. For item 1, when you're categorizing, you categorize, actually you identify, After identifying, you explain how it works. Yes. Now, with all that, you'll find yourself already answering section A items very perfectly. Now, let's have a review of section A. If I may ask, how many numbers will you find in section A? There will be 2 numbers. Where are you going to write your answers? You are going to write your answers in the spaces provided. In how many areas will you be assessed? You are going to be assessed in basically 3 areas. What are these 3 areas? Categorizing, giving a suitability, then advising. Now, when you are categorizing, you mention the categories, you define and give an example where necessary. Unlike for item 1, where you give a category, you explain how it works. Yes, after explaining how it works, you give the effect on human life and mitigate it, and you give an advice based on similarities and differences. But for item 2, you give properties. Item 2, suitability in item 2 will be emphasized on properties. You give at least 4. Advice in item 1 will be 1 impact, mitigated, similarities and differences. But advice in item 2 will be 1 use, will be an impact. Okay, 1 use in item 2 will be with suitabilities. Yes, will be with suitability. So the impact on the environment will not be the impact explained and mitigated. Yes. So this is a brief review of section A. Now let's go to section B. Section B, it has 2 parts. Section B has 2 parts, part 1 and part 2. Each part will have 2 items. So you'll choose only one. Responses to the item will be written in answer booklet provided. So the main objective of this section is to assess your understanding of application of chemistry processes in our daily lives. So this will be shown in form of an essay. How you have understood chemistry will be shown by you writing it down. Now, in your responses to item 3 and 4, these are the 4 basic areas. You indicate a raw material, the process of production, apparatus, make sure you're coherent in description of the process and conversion to desired product. You also purify, if any. Now, the third area is side effect of the process, explain it and mitigate it. Then you identify social benefit. Yeah, so those are the 3 basic areas that you need to put in mind when you're responding to either item 3 or item 4. You're not going to answer both of the items, but you're going to choose one from section B part 1. Either item 3 or item 4, the one that you can approach. Yes. Now, in still under this, in the construction of this item, the examiner is assessing your appreciation of chemistry to the contribution of the economy. So in this item 3 or item 4, the items will be gotten from the first element of construct, which says the learner appreciates the contribution of chemistry to the economy of the country. So the topics that are expected in this part are going to be industrial processes, which is in book 4. Industrial processes in book 4, and industrial processes we have manufacture of chlorine, manufacture of sodium hydroxide, manufacture of cement, lime, manufacture of nitrate fertilizers, extraction of metals like copper, aluminium, and iron. Now, another topic that might probably be set under this section is carbon in life That is in book 3, the first topic actually. Now under that topic, you will have distillation, manufacture of detergents or manufacture of soap. Then you'll have for manufacture of ethanol or the fermentation process. Then you'll also have air as one of the topics that will be set under this under this. So rate of reaction is one of the topics that will be set under this section B part 1, where you'll have the manufacture of sulfuric acid. Then oxidation and reduction will also be set under this, where you apply the which is actually integrated with the extraction of metals, electrolysis. Yes. So these are some of the important tips that we have to keep at the fingertips when we're responding to item 2. Indicate the process of production, which involves the raw materials, the vessels used, the physical and chemical processes. Indicate the conversion to the desired product, the purification product, and ensure that you are coherent. Now, the side effects or dangers of the process must be identified. You explain them and you mitigate them. For example, in the manufacture of cement, the dust produced in the cement factory can end up in the respiratory system of the workers and cause respiratory complications such as asthma. Now, the side effect of the process of manufacturing cement is what? Respiratory complication. How does it occur? It occurs when the dust enters your respiratory system. It causes what? Asthma. You have explained it. Now, what should the workers do in order to mitigate it? They must put on what? Protections such as masks to minimize this. There you are, done with identifying the danger, explaining it and mitigating it. Now you'll also need to identify what? A social benefit. The social benefit must be identified, the effect of that social benefit and the impact. For example, the people living around the cement factory can get employment opportunities at the factory and earn an income. When they're earning the income, this allows them to afford their basic needs. Yes, you can say these people also get employment. Once they get the employment, they get the income once their salary is paid, and their standard of living is improved. You have identified a benefit, you have explained it, and you have actually, yes, you have identified the benefit, the impact of the benefit, and you have explained it. Now, one thing that I need to emphasize here is do not forget to show the chemistry. You can either write equations when describing the process, or you make sure that the processes, the chemical processes, are brought in words but bring them out clearly. If you choose to write equations, it's well. But if you choose to bring them in writing, make sure you bring them clearly. For example, conversion of glucose to ethanol. When you're manufacturing ethanol, the first thing is starch being converted to maltose. How does this one occur? Starch is converted to maltose with the help of enzyme diastase. So diastase facilitates catalyzes the hydrolysis of starch to glucose. Now, again, yeast contains the maltose. The maltose hydrolyzes or catalyzes the hydrolysis of maltose to glucose. Now, how does glucose get into ethanol? This is now conversion to desired product. So the glucose, in presence of the enzyme thiamase, is decomposed or broken down to ethanol and carbon dioxide. So that is conversion to final product. Now you can go on to bring out the purification, where the crude ethanol is being purified by fractional distillation. Now, You don't have to outline the vessels or the apparatus, but you can embed them in your description. Mention all the raw materials that you have used, or you may not outline them, but mention them within your description, so the scorer will be able to identify the raw materials, the vessels in your writing. Yes, it doesn't mean you have to write a heading raw materials, process of production. Yes, you can embed them all in your description. The scorer will find them, but make sure they are clear. So let's have a look at examples of item 3 and 4, which are going to be in section B, part 1. Air is a mixture of different components. It contains 21% of oxygen. Due to a widespread of the respiratory illness caused by COVID-19, there was an increased demand for oxygen by the patients in the hospital. The government supply of oxygen is not enough and is planning to set up an oxygen production plant with minimal environmental impact. However, the science club members in your school would like to know how the process of production will be carried out. As a chemistry student, make a write-up you will use during the presentation. So what is basically this question talking about? There is increased demand for oxygen, and the government supply of oxygen is not enough. So they are planning to make oxygen, or to build an oxygen producing plant. So here is basically manufacture of oxygen. Now, this is actually under air. So under manufacture of oxygen, we are going to identify the raw material. Our raw material when we are manufacturing oxygen is liquid air. Now, how does the process of production occur? The air is passed through air filters to remove dust and smoke particles. Secondly, this air is passed through concentrated sodium hydroxide solution or potassium hydroxide solution to absorb or remove the carbon dioxide and water vapor. This same air, the resulting air components are passed through silicon dioxide or a bed of silica gel to absorb the water vapor. Now, once this water vapor is being absorbed, the carbon dioxide, the reason actually for removing this carbon dioxide and water is the carbon dioxides, once they are put in the system, they can solidify and block the apparatus, so they first need to be removed. But since they are also one of the components that we do not like, we only need the oxygen, we don't need carbon dioxide and water vapor, so we first remove them. So once the carbon dioxide is removed and impurities are removed and the water vapor is also removed, we are left with air component of carbon dioxide and nitrogen. Yes, the air is now compressed. The remaining air components are compressed at pressure of 200 atmosphere, and they are cooled to what? Negative 200 degrees Celsius. Now, once this air is cooled, it becomes a liquid air, which is now fed into fractionating column. Now, once they are put in the fractionating column, they are boiled, and as they are heated, nitrogen will come out first because it has a lower boiling point of negative 196 degrees. It will leave oxygen behind. It means at the temperature of negative 196 degrees, we will have tapped off nitrogen gas because it has higher boiling point, a lower boiling point than oxygen. So at a temperature of negative 183 degrees, there we will now be tapping out oxygen. There we have separated oxygen from other components of air, but still there will be traces of noble gases. So this oxygen can be stored in steel gas cylinders, which can be used in the hospital. Now, I believe you can write down all the side effects and mitigations. Here, when you're writing side effects, the side effects are going to be for the process of production, not on the environment, not on, they are going to be of the production process to the environment. Yes. Now, it's only the production process for which you are going to give the side effect. For example, during the month, here we have talked about boiling this, and you'll find that when you're boiling, the apparatus may heat up. So when they're heating up, you can get burnt. So the people working here should put on personal protective equipment. When you're manufacturing oxygen, there will be other gases, like when you're using the silicon dioxide. There are other gases which are being produced from industrial processes which are pollutant. Once inhaled, they can cause respiratory complications. So how do we protect ourselves from them? We actually protect ourselves by putting on masks and using personal protective equipment. But for all the learners, there's one common side effect for all industrial processes is pollution. Pollution is one common if I may say, side effect of all industrial processes. So it can only be mitigated depending on the type of the pollution that is occurring there. It might be pollution from the gases, it might be sound pollution or noise. Yes. Now, I believe you can explain the social benefit, because definitely this one, the process of production, people can get jobs, no so? People can get employed, and once they get jobs, they earn income, which income helps to improve their standards of living. And these farms, the farms that build up these companies or the plants, they can be taxed by the government. Once they are taxed, it also earns income for the government. So there are many other social benefits of these production processes which you can rehearsal. And as you prepare for these examinations, please, if this is your first time to be in Urban Academia YouTube channel, subscribe. Do not forget to subscribe. Now, let's look at the last part. That is section B, part 2. Section B, part 2 will be composed of item number 5 and item number 6, where from this section you'll also need to pick one item. The construction of these items are from element of construct number 4, which says the learner appreciates the existence of natural resources in the environment and their importance in everyday life. So the expected items are going to come from the following areas. 1. Air. Under air, nitrogen is in air used to make fertilizers, oxygen for various uses, and other components. But here it will be considered as a natural resource. Yes, it will be considered as a natural resource, but not the process of manufacturing it. Let's get the difference. Here, air will be considered as a natural resource, but not manufacturing. Not manufacturing nitrogen, not manufacturing fertilizers. But here, it is going to be considered as a natural resource. So water is one of the areas that may come here. Rocks and minerals, also one of the areas that may come here. We also have carbon in the environment, which is one of the areas that may come here. Under carbon environment, we have the fuels, we have carbon dioxide in the environment. Under hard, we also have hardness of water, but it's gonna be under natural resources. We have the fossil fuels, which are useful sources of energy in the environment. Now, these are the areas that may come, but there is a specific way of approaching these areas. Let's go and see how we can approach this area. Under here, under item section B, item Section B Part 2, Item 5 and 6, you are expected to mention the category of the natural resource. Natural resources are categorized into renewable and non-renewable natural resources. So you define or you give a reason why you have categorized as a natural resource, and you give an example. If you have categorized as a renewable natural resource, why have you categorized it as a renewable natural resource? You define it. Now, after defining, you give an example. For example, if you look at the vegetation, forest is a renewable natural resource. We have categorized it as a renewable natural resource. The reason is it can be replaced once it is used up. Example becomes forest, right? Now, you give the composition of the natural resource. You give the composition of the natural resource. Give any three compositions of the natural resource. Now, you identify from the scenario the human activities that are affecting the natural resource. Describe how these activities occur or how they affect the resources in the environment, and how their effect can be mitigated. Now, you explain the importance or the benefit of the natural resource. So those are the four basic areas that you need to take note when you are responding to items in section B part 2. Let me repeat. 1. You mention a category. You give a reason for the categorization, that is by defining, and you give an example. Do not forget to give the composition or the components. You give at least 3 components. If you don't give a composition, it means you have not done any work. Yes, you have to give the composition. Now, from the scenario, you identify the human activities affecting the natural resource, how the impact occurs, and mitigate it. And lastly, you give the importance or the benefit of the natural resource. Here, let's try to look at an example. The people in Seroma village have often been found carrying out bush burning, overgrazing, and stone quarrying. They are now facing breathing problems and low soil fertility, and are now wondering why this is happening. The LC1 chairperson has organized an emergency village meeting with the theme Environmental Conservation, a Responsibility for All. As a chemistry student and one of the village members, make a write-up about the theme that you represent in the village meeting. How do I respond to this? I'm giving this one as general. You identify one natural resource from the scenario. You categorize that particular natural resource you have identified. You give a reason, then you give example. Do not forget to give the composition. Now, for example, let me give in general. Natural resources are categorized into renewable natural resources and non-renewable natural resources. Renewable natural resources because they can be replenished once they are used. For example, air, stones, water, the vegetation. Non-renewable natural resources are resources which cannot be replenished once they are used up. For example, fossil fuels, the rocks, and others. Now, what are the composition of these natural resources? Air is composed of oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, dust particles, water vapor, and so on. Water is composed of hydrogen, oxygen, and other impurities. Vegetations of the trees are composed of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, sometimes calcium and sodium, and others. Now, rocks are composed of limestone, mica, quartz, feldspar, amphibole, pyroxene, oxide, silicate, and carbonate impurities. Yes. Fossil fuels are basically composed of carbon and hydrogen. Sometimes they also have components of oxygen, components of sulfur, nitrogen, and moisture. So at least under composition, you give at least 3 compositions. Now, From this scenario, there are natural resources like the bush, which is the vegetation, and quarrying. Quarrying is done on stones, not so? Quarrying is done on stone. So you take any of these, you take just one. If you're taking rocks, you're going to respond on rocks. If you're taking the vegetation, you're going to respond on what? The vegetation. So this is just a way you're going to respond. You pick one natural resource, you give its category, like the rocks. The rocks are non-renewable natural resources. The reason being they cannot be replenished once they are used up. Yes. Then we also use the rock as an example. Rocks are composed of limestone, mica, quartz, feldspar. Actually, we have amphibole, we have pyroxene. You take any three of these that you can easily remember. Now, what are the impacts of the human activities on the natural resource? If people continue doing quarrying, what will be the impact of quarrying? It will be on the environment. For example, in the places where they are doing quarrying, there are going to be holes left in the activities. Holes left in the places. Once the holes are left there, snakes can come and they can come and hide there. And once they are hidden there, anytime they can be threat to the human life. They can bite someone. Once they have bitten this person can die. How do we mitigate this one here? What should we do to avoid this? They can use snake repellents. Yes, they can use the snake repellents. If you're writing about the bush burning, the bush is part of vegetation. The bush composed of trees, which trees contain carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. They are renewable natural resources. They can be replaced. People can once the grass burns, it can still grow again. So once they are burning them, the bush also contains trees, right? You can even plant this. You can plant the trees. Now, when you are burning these bushes, they increase the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. How? These trees are responsible for regulating the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, because they use this carbon dioxide as a raw material to make their own food. So in the process, they reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So if the trees are burnt away, first of all, when they are burning, they produce carbon dioxide, and second of all, when they are not there, they will not regulate the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It means the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is going to increase. So carbon dioxide, being a greenhouse gas, it traps heat in the atmosphere. So as it traps the heat, the effect of the trapped heat can lead to global warming. So how do we mitigate this effect? It can be mitigated by afforestation. It means when we are going to plant more trees, the more we plant the trees, the more carbon dioxide these trees we have planted will absorb. So for them, they will be using this carbon dioxide as a raw material. But in the process, they will regulate the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So now we can write the benefit of the natural resource. Remember, in that scenario, let's go back. In this scenario here, there are many natural resources here. You see, it says bush burning, stone quarrying, and people are facing difficulty in breathing. What do people breathe? They breathe the what? They breathe the air also, and they're having problems with the soil fertility. There are many natural resources. So you pick one of them, you write on. So what you're seeing here is just general about natural resources. So that is basically how you can respond to items in section B part 2. If I may emphasize, give a category of a natural resource, of any one natural resource that you have identified, give a reason, and give that natural resource you have identified as an example, or you can give at least 2 or 3 natural resource examples. Then the composition of that natural resource you have identified, you give at least 3 composition. If you identified example with rocks, give at least 3 compositions of rock or components of rocks. If you have identified vegetation, give at least 3 components of vegetation. Yes, any natural resource that you have identified, give at least the compositions. If you don't give the composition, you'll have done nothing. Now, after giving the composition, you identify a human activity that is affecting the natural resource. You explain how this activity affects the natural resource, and you mitigate this activity. Then last of all, you now give a benefit of this natural resource. There you'll have responded to item 5 or item 6, depending on your choice. So this is another example. Oskuru village in Tororo district is at the foot of Tororo Rock. It is talking about rock. People of the village have for a very long time practiced charcoal burning, animal husbandry, crop husbandry, and stone quarrying. Yes, the animals have started dying, and wells are drying up. Wells are water bodies, they are drying up, yet little water available is not fresh. The locals are now wondering why all these are happening. A sensitization workshop is to be organized to explain the existing situation in the village. The theme of the workshop is My Environment, My Responsibility. As a chemistry student, write a message you will deliver upon invitation. You see, you identify the natural resource here which you are conversant with. We are going to categorize it. You give a reason for the categorization and give an example. You're going to give its composition. You identify the human activity that is affecting that natural resource. Impact. You explain how this human activity affects the natural resource. Then you mitigate it. And then you're going to give the benefit of this natural resource. There you will have responded to this item. Someone can choose rock. Someone can choose the swamps or the wells, the water body, or you can choose the one that you're conversant with. Then, under natural resources, these are some of the questions that I want you to. This some of the questions that you need to ask yourself. What is a natural resource? What are the types of natural resource? Then you give example, right? If it is water, what is the natural resource? What is its type? Yes, then you give example, depending on the category. Identify the impact of any activity on the environment, on the natural resource, describe how it occurs and mitigate it. Mention one benefit of the natural resource, but keep in line with the scenario or the task that is being given to you. Keep in line with the scenario. Read the scenario, understand it well, and that will help you to respond better. Now, when you are approaching section B items, start from anywhere. There is no particular order in which you are to write your essay. Just make sure that you write about each of the items I have just actually highlighted here. You do not need to use subheadings. Just write it as an essay. Now, much as the items may require you to make presentations or write letters or things of that sort, do not waste your time on the formalities like greetings. Just go direct to the item. You may find a scenario item quite lengthy. By the time to read it, understand it, relate it well. Just write the essay on it. Take your time and plan yourself well according to the time that is being given to you there. Plan it very well and make sure you respond to the items in the given time. Look for responses within the support materials. The support material we're talking about here is the scenario item or any image that will be given on the answer book, the question paper. So So that is the support material. Use that support material, generate responses within the support materials that is being given there. For example, under natural resources, if they have not asked rocks, why would you write about rocks? Yet it is not been asked. It is not there in the support material. Why would you respond about it? It becomes irrelevant. So please take note of that. Now, respond to the support material. This will save you from headache of recalling what you learned in your lesson. And there is enough response you can draw from the support materials. Do not forget the chemistry. Have you noticed that some of the section A items and section B part 1 revolve around a given topic, but in section B part 2, the items revolve around many topics which have been integrated in one task. Yes. So, as you are preparing for your exams, please, I want you to keep this in your mind. The key difference between section A and section B is that with section B, the item is not broken into several tasks. Experience has shown that nothing beats discussion. As a discussant, you will benefit most. So please continue with your discussions. During your class activities, draw flowcharts of industrial processes, showing what is happening at each stage. This will help you to visualize the process rather than cramming it. So avoid cram work. So if this is your first time to being here in this channel, subscribe, and if you have never been there, please give a like. And with all this, I believe you have gotten a concept on how you can respond to the various items in chemistry right from item 1 to item 4. So I believe with this, you will now be responding to section A items, the 2 items which are very compulsory, and as you pick one item from section B part 1 and one item from section B part 2, you can respond to it very well. So I want to take this initiative to wish you success in any examination that you're going to have. From henceforth, any chemistry paper that you're going to sit, I want to wish you success. Please integrate the knowledge, integrate the guide, and this will help you to perform well in your class or in your examination, and you'll be having a brighter success. So I wish you good luck. Regards to you all. Thank you.